Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Ivan Oberon's Money Matters. This is Thursday, June 26th. And man, I am ready for May to be. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going backwards here, Corey. What's going on? I am ready for
Yeah,
July. I was just talking to Corey, and I'm just like, man, this just June gloom just is killing me. It's like warm over here, but you try to go to the beach, and there's nothing but clouds, and you can't really enjoy your day. So I'm ready for July, but it's crazy how fast this year is going because we're already at the end of June. School is out for those of you who have kids, so that could be either a really good thing or maybe not so good thing. For me, I love having my kids out of school because we can spend a lot more time together doing fun things and just being together. And there just seems to be this additional connectivity that you develop with your family over the summer, at least in my house, because that's kind of the way that we like to do it. And this evening, we're doing something a little bit different. We have a very special guest by the name of Coery Siegel, and I'm going to put his picture here so that everybody can see. And Corey, you'll notice that I gave you like an extra 15% of the screen, so you can you can
wow.
you can thank me for that later.
I don't know. Are you going to charge me for that or what?
But that great looking guy right there, his name is Coery Siegel. He is the senior underwriting and sales manager extraordinaire with MOR Financial. And MOR Financial is a hard money, a creative hard money lender out of Los Angeles, California. And I'm going to obviously let Corey go into the details as far as who he is and who they are. But I want to welcome you all for a very special evening. We're gonna do more of a kind of a casual conversational webinar as an introduction to finance, the world of finance, the world of real estate investing and finance, the world of hard money lending and private money lending, and a little bit into MOR Financial and what they do and how they do it differently than some of the other people out there. In a follow-up webinar, we're going to have Corey come back with us and actually provide us with kind of a more formal PowerPoint presentation to get more into details, to maybe give examples of deals and how to get them done, what they can do, etc. But I wanted to bring Corey on and represent MOR Financial, particularly because we've been working with them for quite some time now. We've become very good friends, and anybody that we actually work with and believe in what they stand for and the type of business that they do are the people that we want to bring and present to all of you. And that's been kind of our model from the beginning. Everything from the insurance carriers that we use to the credit restoration guys that we use, because credit is such a integral part of the real estate investor and the entrepreneur's world that I don't think too many people or enough people really champion, to the hard money lenders, the different educators that are out there, the attorneys that are out there, all these different people and resources and power team players in the real estate investing world, regardless of the strategy that you're in. We want to make sure that we connect you with the people that we have vetted, that we have seen face to face, that we have spent time with personally, not just over the phone, not just doing some kind of online due diligence, so that we can stand behind them and what it is that they're promoting or presenting or offering. So, with that said, here's Corey. I'm gonna. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Corey, and kind of how you got into the world of finance, really? Because I find that a lot of people that manage funds and that do this business, they got their start somewhere along the line in finance and banking and that sort of thing. Most of them didn't just fall into it. So, how did you? I mean, did you go to your high school counselor, or what did you do?
I wouldn't wish anything on anybody to just fall into finance. I'm not sure that that is even possible because it takes a different type of person to actually enjoy punching some numbers into a calculator all day and looking at spreadsheets and whatnot. But
Right.
before we even get into that, though, I mean, I can't echo what you had just mentioned enough. Where in the real estate industry, I think more so than just about any other industry, there are so many people out there that are trying to make it, and there are plenty of people that we all work with that have been fortunate enough to be successful, and they've gone through the rigors and made the mistakes that you hopefully want to avoid if you're getting into investing, or even if you're a seasoned pro at it. So,
Mm-hmm.
in my personal opinion, you align yourself with the right people, whether it's like you mentioned, insurance agents, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, hard money lenders, educators of any way, shape, or form, and pick the brains. Try to avoid the mistakes that they have made, because we all have made mistakes, and
Right.
if you're aligning yourself with the right people, those people will be more than happy to explain to you what has gone on in their career so far. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't echo
absolutely.
that enough.
And you appreciate that transparency, right? Because one of the things that I don't know, was always a sticking point for us was these gurus and these different people out there just telling you about all their wonderful successes and everything that they've ever done, and how wonderful everything is. And many of them just either neglect or purposely fail to tell you about, hey, I failed this at this. I made a mistake. I lost money. I did this and that. And we're not about that, and we like hearing from people's failures as well.
Well, I mean, and I would say to even go further into that, if somebody is kind of pretending or presenting to people and people who are looking up to them for some sort of educational specific or expertise, and they have mentioned that they've only been successful and everything is a no-brainer or a slam dunk deal, I would ideally just walk in the opposite direction
You
because
call you call that
frankly,
a suspect, yes.
yeah, you suspect. I mean, for me, transparency is huge. And in our industry, with what we do at MOR Financial as a hard money lender, unfortunately for the industry, but fortunately at the same time for MOR Financial, it's not a very transparent industry. So we
Right.
try to play off of that as much as possible and really break down the nuts and bolts of what it is from a lending mindset and lending perspective on each particular deal. It's something I actually enjoy the most out of my job is to sit down with somebody who wants to really know how we get to the end result.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, if we talk about that enough times from a relationship on a business side of things, then as a client of mine or what I'm looking to do, we're all on the same page. After doing that 4, 5, 6 times, a
Sure.
client can come to me and kind of point out things to me that maybe I'm not looking at as well. So you got to create that kind of mentality and have that transparency in business in general. But that's what we play off of. We
Okay.
know that hard money kind of has that connotation out there that there's so many unknowns about it. But we want to squash all of that as
Sure.
quickly as possible
Well,
because
and that's why I
that
want
just sets
to
us aside.
that's why I want to make things personal for you, for everybody right now. Seeing as your position there and how much we love you guys, I want to create that relationship because when there's a need and they need to call on somebody, I want people to have that confidence level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I want to just build you up a little bit, as far as how you did get started in the business and how
Yeah.
eventually that led you to MOR Financial.
Yes, and to kind of circle back on that, I graduated from Cal State Fullerton with a finance degree. I also minored in communications, human communications specifically. So
Oh, look
I'm
at
really
you.
big into psychology,
Okay.
human tendencies, nonverbal signs, and the way to kind of read people from a standpoint of not necessarily getting people's brains, but just to see how they're really feeling about a certain situation. So
Hmm.
I think that helps from a sales perspective.
Oh yeah.
Because to me, I'm a big comfort guy. I won't mind paying a little bit more at a different store if I really truly feel like the experience to me is better and warrants that. Because I want to trust
Sure.
people, I want to believe in people's faith, and I also know that people have to make a living. So if it's a little bit here and there, I mean everything within reason, of course, and you enjoy the experience, to me that weighs more heavily than saving X amount of dollars or cents on a particular item that you're buying or whatnot. But
Sure.
after after college, I went and worked for a commercial finance and leasing company
Hmm.
out of Orange County, and we did finance for business purpose loans for capital expenditures and anything from commercial equipment, yellow iron, conveyor belts, assembly lines, all the way to office equipment, office furniture. I did a $500,000 deal for respiratory systems for a company in the Northeast. Um, a deli in Florida and whatnot. So really a wide variety of different types of quote unquote assets at the time.
Yeah.
And when that industry was moving, everybody in their right mind thought everything was an asset. So you pretty much could list whatever you wanted on whatever. And we all learned from that experience, whether it was real estate or anything in between. So I did
Mm.
start out in finance. I got away from it quickly when the market changed,
Okay.
but I started out in finance for sure.
So then, after that, did you get into real estate as a asset class, as an investment, or did you just start looking for other people to work with in that kind of industry, and run into Sean Morsey somewhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was actually a little bit of a lull, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for geez, it had to be
Mhm.
probably 3.5 years or so. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually
I think
started,
many of us have been there.
and
What do I want to be when I grow
it's
up? I don't know. I don't
yeah,
even know that I
right.
want to grow up.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we all have been in that position, and then you start thinking about, well, maybe I should take some extra classes and go back to school or do something else. So,
Yeah,
um, I worked for a company called Skechers, located out of Manhattan Beach. They're the shoe company
yeah.
that everybody knows and sees on millions of kids' shoes around California or anywhere really where you are. And I did international marketing, so I got a different side of business and a different view of business from a big corporate lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I carry over to my day to day now, and things that I quickly forget because it's not quite the way that I think this business needs to be in real
Sure.
estate. And I worked a couple of years for them to kind of learn a little bit more about marketing and visual merchandise and all of that fun stuff.
And
That was
some of
not
the
so
stuff you
sales
carried
oriented.
over was what, like 30 pairs of shoes or
I have more Skechers shoes than you would want to imagine, but they have some pretty nice men's dress shoes right now. But that's a whole different
yeah,
story.
but that's a great experience. And see, I love hearing this story, me personally, maybe, hopefully other people do too. But when I see successful businesses and successful people, and I understand that it took something to get there, right? I understand that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And I like seeing the
Mhm.
trail because I don't know, I almost like living vicariously through the minds of people who have succeeded in different types of businesses, even if I'm not in that business, because I
No,
can always
exactly.
find out what can I do to emulate some of that in my own life and in my own business, and
Hmm.
hear the struggles and things like finance and uh, you know money and stuff like that interests me. So even though I'm not specifically in that industry, I find what you guys do very, very interesting. So that's
Hmm.
awesome.
And when we go around, I mean, and do presentations on the power of leverage or try to explain a little bit more in detail to people about what it is that private lenders try to do and look for and hard money lenders are going after. To me, the most important thing is we're all people. There's a story behind everybody, and there's usually a journey, and we all probably started in something relatable and moved
Right.
our way through to where we are now. And I think the biggest thing is just being passionate and happy about what you're doing,
Hmm.
and knowing that not everybody just wakes up one day, straight out of wherever they were, working part time or working full time somewhere, and says, "I want to invest in real estate."
Right.
Usually it's a more complex type of situation to get there, and then you
Sure.
take the bull by the horns at that point and kind of move on. So we're all the same, whether it's somebody who's working as a sales manager, more financial, or somebody who's stacking rental properties throughout the Midwest.
Hmm.
There's more to it than just going that way. So, um,
So from your corporate job
after
at Skechers, then you got into, hey, there's something going on with real estate.
yeah, I kind of got over the cubicle lifestyle and the 5,000 people in the campus that was the corporate lifestyle because there are a lot of politics. I mean, there are politics in every industry, but when
Sure.
you get into a huge office building and there's seniority involved, and rightfully so, though, those people who have been there for a long time have earned that. But I thought I need to be in front of people. I need to communicate what my passions are. And I literally one day sat down with maybe an adult beverage or two. I can't really remember, and
Could be.
did you could possibly and did a what I like to call a word vomit. Just took a piece of paper out and started writing down things that came to my mind,
Hmm.
and took about 30 minutes doing that. And after a while, I started piecing it together. I saw real estate, I saw salesperson,
Hmm.
investment, agent, broker, property, wealth, those type of freedom, and those were just natural
That's
words before
powerful,
even getting
man.
into real estate.
That's
Yeah.
powerful. And I want all you guys listening right now, whether you're listening live right now or on the podcast, take special attention to that because here you're picking up some golden nuggets of habits and information that successful people do. And sometimes they don't have very eloquent terms like word vomit, but you have no idea how important and impactful it will be in your life and in your business and whatever you're trying to build right now as an entrepreneur, to be able to find some quiet moments to yourself in some kind of, whatever you want to call it, meditation. And I don't mean it in an hysterical sense, but just to be quiet with yourself, because there's so many distractions, so many things pulling at you, and so many noises and everything. Just sit there by yourself sometimes and do things like mind storming and brainstorming and mind maps. And well, there you go, word vomiting
It,
to
I
help you
wish
get
there
some,
was a better
some
way to
help you get
relay
some
it.
clarity.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a better way to describe it, but
No,
let
it's
me
perfect. It's
ultimately,
perfect.
And to me, this was before I knew what after repair value was, and before I knew what even hard money lending was. I mean,
Yeah.
went from that particular time, and I've known AJ for about 10 years. AJ Mera, who's the
Yeah.
managing partner with Sean Morsey here at MOR Financial, and through AJ, I met Sean, and
Okay.
we knew each other for a little while. They always kind of whispered in my ear that maybe if I ever thought about changing from the corporate lifestyle, coming and joining them and whatnot. So they kind of headhunted me from Skechers. I looked at them one day,
Nice.
not too probably a couple of days after that episode with writing down all my thoughts and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hey guys, let me come out and talk to you. That's kind of
So they
2 weeks
did
after
you
I
a
sat down
favor,
with them.
that's for sure.
They did me a favor, but they every day I saw them at barbecues and whatnot. They were definitely saying, "Hey man, when do you want to come and sit down with me?" So they were in my ear. They knew what they were doing. I would say they're pretty good
But it took
salesmen
that
in the real estate
it
world.
took you getting yourself to a point of whatever your constructive discontent was in the corporate world of Skechers for you to finally, in a sense, concede and be like, okay, fine. And that's kind of what happened to me too. I can totally relate to that because before I got into the insurance world, I was doing all kinds of different sales jobs, and I was out there on my own. I was doing the thing, and I kept getting talked into, hey, come into the insurance business, come into the insurance business. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 no. And then I finally got to that point. It's like, fine, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm to that point. I guess I'll go back to school,
Right,
and I did.
right. It's funny how things work out, because you have different. I think I'm a big believer in timing, and just in your life in general. And usually, the decisions that are very important to you and what you want to do come to you at the right time, and
Right.
for whatever reason. And so, it just kind of worked out. I sat down with the guys. Um, I was like a Tuesday afternoon, and 2 weeks later, I was working for them. And I got to be honest with you, the day that I told them I'd say, yeah, let's do this, I still did not have an idea of what hard money lending was. And
Mm-hmm. Or ARB.
so, you believe you believe in people, you believe in your decision, you believe in kind of your gut feeling of what you should be doing, and you just kind of take it from there. And from that day forward, you never look back. I love what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I really think there's a value for it out there. There's value on both sides of the table, whether it's from a borrower side or a lender side. And there will always, in my opinion, be a need for private lending and hard money lending in the real estate world, whether it's
Sure.
commercial or residential or development or anything in between. And I just think it's a tool that people really need to know about and how to use properly. And that's
Right.
the key, is to use it properly.
And well, tell us now with that. Tell us a little bit for those of us on the call, or the people on the call here who haven't heard of More Financial. Give us a little bit about More Financial, and what the philosophy behind More Financial is, and what the vision was, and really how it's set up.
Well, MOR Financial started back in 2006. Sean Morsey founded the company back as a conventional mortgage broker, mortgage house, and was working on the conventional side of things for a couple of years. And him and AJ teamed up, I believe, at the beginning of 2008 or maybe at the end of 2006 or whatnot. And as the credit market kind of seized up and dried up, AJ and Sean sat down and said, we got to figure out a way to do something. Um,
Right.
and they kind of were picking the brains of some people that they knew and saw private money and hard money as a huge opportunity, especially in a down market. And so at that particular time, it was towards the end of 2008,
Right.
they primarily just solely started to focus on hard money lending. And here we are a couple of years later. The philosophy behind what we do really is based, you treat people like people and you provide them with good information and really keep a mindset of not every deal is the same, and let's find a creative solution and option.
Yeah.
Because if we were going to fit every deal inside of a box, there would be no difference between every single lender. You can Google hard money and find 1,000 people, especially in the state of California,
Oh yeah.
that will promote themselves as a hard money lender. And so, what sets you apart? Is it pricing? That's really not the case because pricing is nominal in the grand scheme of things. So from that stance, More Financial work, we would like to call ourselves a powerhouse of private lending, a
Mm-hmm.
creative financing institution who wants to really work with people who are that next level investor, whether it's a beginning process and you're starting out that process, or you've done 100 deals. The next level investor really has a bigger picture of everything and
Mm-hmm.
wants to bounce ideas off each other. Because again, it's not a cut and dry or cookie cutter type of process.
Yeah.
Every deal commands a different type of different type of mindset, and
Well,
that's
and
what we
I love what you're saying here, and we're going to get into this a little bit more. And I just want to interject really quickly, just to give some perspective, because when I started in the business, obviously everybody starts somewhere, right? Anybody that knows everything about something at one point knew nothing about it, and I was just like you. I was entrenched in the insurance business. I didn't know anything about ARV or any of that stuff. I knew that kind of stuff was floating around out there around me. It just I just hadn't put any energy into it yet. But when I did start down the path of education to find out more about what that opportunity was and how I can get involved and whether it was a good fit for me or not, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that they have you do when you go through, especially some of the bigger guru guys that are educating out there, one of the
Mhm.
things that they have you do, of course, is they talk about hard money lenders and leveraging your money off of hard money lenders. And one of the exercises that they recommend you do, of course, is start calling hard money lenders, start researching them online, start getting the verbiage and the conversation, and kind of generating your own script, and learning through failure and process of elimination, right? And so I must have done that with at least 100 different hard money lenders. So, like you were saying, they're everywhere out there. So,
Everywhere.
but I started realizing very quickly that, you know what, I didn't want to deal with this. I didn't want to go through these hoops. I didn't, everybody had different options, and requirements and conditions, and of course fees and prices and everything else. And I thought there had to be a better way. And so, and I began with just raising my own private money, and I started doing deals that way. And here we are years later, we meet you guys, and we start talking about your philosophies and how you do things and what you do. And then I realized finally a hard money lender that I could work with, that
Mhm.
that knows how I feel as a real estate investor, as a rehabber, and the needs that I don't I want some creative options. Like you said, I
Mhm.
hate, and most entrepreneurs I think hate the whole inside of the box mentality,
Oh gosh.
right?
Right.
So same thing when I was in I say was, I'm still connected to the insurance world, but now for
Hmm.
real estate investors instead of the general public. But when I was dealing with those companies, the best relationships I had were with my underwriters that looked at every situation on a case by case basis, because every
Hmm.
situation merits its own review, instead of here's this thing, here's this address, here's this person, etc. And no, it doesn't fit. Well, what do you mean it doesn't fit? It's like they put it through an automated calculator, and then so there's no relationship. Well, how am I going to establish a relationship with an underwriter that works that way within the box when my mind doesn't work
Yeah.
that way? So
Well, I
anyway,
mean, even echoing off of that, I mean, even if it was a structure that was going off of that, here's what the box is. Most people will say, well, here's what the box is. We'll see you later. Well, how do you get around that? What is the solution to fit it into that box? And so
mhm,
it's not necessarily that, all hard money lenders offer different products, but how do you make that particular product work? And what are some ideas we can talk about to make that happen? Because we all know a lot of people in the industry. So whether it's,
sure,
if it's a lack of capital or it's, a little bit here or there, I'm sure we can find it one way or the other through all of our networks.
right. And so let's get into a little bit about what really makes MOR Financial unique to most hard money lenders. And I know we're really focusing on more here just because that's who we're representing, and we're going to be talking about hard money lending in general. But I really want you guys to get to know them, because they're great. They would be a great resource for you guys. So let's what really sets you guys apart? I mean, what are some of the unique things that you do, and how you work to fit things within a box or work outside of the box?
No, I would think that there's so many things that we could list from a standpoint of. I think that it all comes under this one umbrella of trying to make the process and the transaction a little bit more ease of mind, or not as stressful from a borrower standpoint. There are so many things that go on in a transaction that sometimes, for better or for worse, borrowers don't really even know about. Whether it's talking to escrow companies or escrow officers, or getting a call to title to clear some stuff off of a title report, talking to agents to coordinate inspections if they're needed.
Mm-hmm.
Every little thing of that sort that goes into effectively a 7 to 10 day window. So we talk to conventional loan officers all the time that refer business to us, and they traditionally work with 30 and 45 day escrows. But when you're talking about 10 days, you're squeezing the same exact stuff a massively shorter amount of time. And so what makes us different from more financials, we really get really unbelievably involved in the underwriting process and the pricing of the process. And so from that standpoint, bring the deal in when you feel like it's going to be a deal, not when it actually is a deal, because we can really take some time and pull through it and get everything in line before really even the process is finalized on your end. And the next follow-up question we usually get is, so you want to take a look at every single deal that we had before we even start writing offers? Well, I wouldn't mind doing that to go through the numbers with you to explain to you kind of what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. But then as an investor, you have a good feeling about what's going to come up next and what may actually get accepted. So, that's when we really want to take a look at stuff and go into it and really make it happen. Because if you don't know what we're looking at from an underwriting standpoint or what the numbers need to look like to get you the best loan amount, then you're almost looking blindly at a deal. So
sure.
Let's get familiar with each other's process and make that happen from us. And so that's kind of what sets us apart from more financial.
Well, and I will add to that, just because I know I was leading you a certain way with the question, and you elaborated even more so. But one thing that I like that is different about more than most of the other people out there is they are the closest thing, in my opinion, to working with a private money lender, because they will actually loan. Now, what are you doing out there, man? Are you playing drums or something? Somebody?
Me? No.
Yeah, I keep hearing something.
Is it?
Maybe there's some.
Oh, you keep hearing noises? No.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's me cutting in and out.
Huh. Well, anyway, so they will lend 100% on both the acquisition and the rehab, and depending on the deal, they might even roll in the payments so that you don't have to come out of pocket on the monthly payments on those loans. So it's just a matter of being good at sourcing deals so that you can get that stuff wrapped up and have the funding, because they can do a first, they can do a second, they can help you find money. So the other thing is the fact that especially if you're starting out, if you're a little bit newer in the business, or if you're going into an area that maybe you're not really familiar with, and you know that a good hard money lender like MOR Financial works that area, does loans in that specific area or in that specific state. One of the things I like doing, I'll give an example of what would have been about a $2 million flip here in the Hollywood Hills. I got the deal across my desk, and wasn't familiar with the area, wasn't really familiar with the potential in that area for this house, because really we needed to add about $800,000 in value to make this thing work. So the first thing that I did was I shot it over to Corey, explained to him the situation, and said, hey, give me an overall feel for this area. What are you doing out there? What are the loans that you're doing out there? What are you seeing as far as respectable ARVs that we can compare to? And he gave me basically a full analysis of the situation, and he told me, he's like, you know what, I think you definitely have a deal here if you can add the value. So that helped give me the confidence to at least take it to the next step. So my next step was to get my developer and my designers and architects on the line, have them look over the situation and ask them the same thing. Hey, can we add $800,000 worth of value for about $130,000, $150,000 in rehab to make it match these comps that are at 2.2 and we want to sell at 1.9? And so I took it through that step. They did their analysis also, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they were confident in the deal. I was like, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and throw the offer in. So we ended up doing that. And there was a net spread on that thing of about $450,000, Corey. And it was so in that case, because it was a great deal, they were able to get really aggressive in their funding. And we were already creatively thinking about, okay, well, we can structure the first one like this for this much money. We can structure a second one like this for this much money. And then we can go pull in this other money over here, because we had a solid deal. And I don't know if there's any other hard money lender out there that is willing to go through all that work and have the relationships in order to do that. Now, the long story short on that is we ended up coming in second place on that property. And it hasn't been quite 30 days yet. We're thinking and speculating that it could potentially fall out because it was a conventional purchase.
Hmm.
But we haven't heard anything yet. So anyway, that's the moral of the story. That's one of the things that sticks out to me as far as what makes them different, what sets them
Yep.
apart. So look for the deals, and if you need a
Right.
little bit of help, reach out to them as a resource, because their job is to keep you safe. Their job is to protect the money that their lenders, essentially the private lenders that are invested in them, are giving them in order to do deals. So when you need a little bit of help, don't forget that you have that as a resource. And I don't think a lot of
Right.
people see it that way.
I mean, and if I can just kind of jump in there too, I mean, I think when you go through the process, and you'd be better suited to tell anybody that than anybody else, but you almost get a feeling of, wow, okay, now I know what is possible, right? I know that if I have the right deal, they
Right.
can come up with the right type of loan and make it happen. Where a lot of times, especially investors who may be working on one or two deals right now, or maybe they're strapped for cash because they're working on 10.
Right.
They don't really necessarily know what is possible because they don't pick up the phone and call. And so, we get a lot of requests for your typical lending matrix. That's big in the conventional world, but not so much in the private world.
Mm-hmm.
Where, what's the matrix? Can you send me over your matrix? Well, if I send you a matrix, then I'm leaving it up to somebody who may not be structuring hard money loans as regularly as we do to fit a particular deal into this matrix and see if it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it doesn't, then they don't pick up the phone and call. So
Right.
I don't do that. To me, it's just call me. Let's take
Yeah.
20 minutes out of the day
I love
to
it.
go through the comparables and see what we can do. And then let's say it works out or it doesn't. If it doesn't work out, so be it. At least you know that we're capable of doing that and putting that together. So the next one, you go in maybe with a little bit less of downtime, or possibly
Sure.
just a shorter close time or whatever it may be to strengthen your offer. And that's when you really start doing deals.
Okay. Now I want to address something for some of our listeners out there that maybe are a little bit newer into the business, or in
Mm-hmm.
working with hard money lenders, or maybe they've already done some deals with a hard money lender, but they want
Mm-hmm.
to they want to expand their possibilities in dealing with other ones and maybe different areas. What would you say is the best way to do your own due diligence on a hard money lender? Because you gotta interview them too, because there are some out there that
Right.
that I know. I've heard the horror stories of. I actually, I'll fess up. We were talking total transparency earlier. Well, I did a deal in the beginning where we were going to do a double close in Pennsylvania, and they told us, this hard money lender told us that they were gonna fund a certain amount based off of this appraised value, and
Mm-hmm.
then they came back when it came time to closing, and they dropped the amount that they were going to lend to us by $150,000. Come to find out that they did an as is value appraisal. And then we had to get them
Wow.
out there again to do an after repair value appraisal. And then they still came back $50,000 below what they originally had given us. And it completely blew up the deal. So,
The old bait and switch.
yes, the old bait and
Right.
switch. And then they, of
Yeah.
course, they wanted to keep all of my deposit for their
Right.
fees and everything else when they weren't going to fund the deal. So, just to
Mm-hmm.
say that there's got to be I wish somebody had asked this question when I was getting started and dealing with hard money lenders, like, what's the best way to do your due diligence on one?
Right. I mean, and the funny thing is, when you were mentioning earlier the educators that are out there with the different schools of flipping or rehabbing properties, I always, within 2 minutes of the conversation, know when somebody has come from one of those schools because they give you a template, right? They give you a template of questions
A
to ask
script,
and
yes.
a script. I mean, but more so than the script, it is just literally a series of interrogation questions, which, you know, and that's, if it works for people, then that's the way to get organized and be productive with the questioning of a lender. I think there's definitely value to that. But I would also kind of urge people to take your own approach to it as well. Don't just say, "Hey, Corey, I have a couple questions I'm going to ask you," and then what are your points, what are your interests, what's your LTV, all this kind of stuff. I think what you want to do is get to know somebody first. Kind of figure out where their company policy is,
Kind of like
what
what we're
what
doing
their
now.
beliefs are.
Weird.
Exactly, exactly. Because anybody will tell you what they want to hear. It's one of those things where that's when you get involved with maybe the wrong kind of lenders because somebody will tell you one
Sure.
point and 10%. And then you'll go, wow, that's the lowest I've heard out of all five of these lenders. Well, if there are four of the five lenders at 3 points and 12%, and one of them is at 1 point and 10%, the one person is lying. It's
Mm.
just flat out. The market will dictate pricing. So it's not always about pricing, but um, the best way to talk to a lender is with a particular scenario, something that you can relate to. So if you don't have a deal, then use a fictitious deal. And not to say to the lender that you don't that this is a real deal, but oh, in this scenario, if I was to buy a property for X amount, put X amount of dollars into it, so you can really relate to what they can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you bridge off of that particular that structure. So since most what we do is different types of loan programs and different leverage points and anything in between. I can take one scenario and slice it 4 or 5 different ways to make you feel comfortable with, is it the highest loan amount that I'm going after? Is it the lowest loan amount I'm going after? Is it whatever motivates you as a borrower? And that would be my job to figure out is what is motivating to you? Is it price point? Because we can always get cheaper money if you lower the leverage point. Is it keeping as much money in your pocket? Well, we can always get higher leverage points if that's what is the motivating factor. So in order to kind of gauge the interest of the lender, or try and I guess interview lenders, you want to make sure that they're a direct lender. You want to make sure that they're not brokering deals out to other brokers. And in the hard money world, there are two different types of direct lenders. One would be direct to their private lenders. So MOR Financial, we table fund transactions. We don't run a fund. We do that specifically so we can have more creative options. We went through the process of trying to get that in line, and thinking about it, kicking around that idea more so than trying to get it in line. But we like what we do with our lenders and who we work with. So we will actually bring a deal directly to a lender that we've worked with in the past.
Okay.
Whereas a traditional fund will have a criteria that you have to fit into in order to
Sure.
get the loan from them. So there's a huge difference and one is different than the other, meaning the private lender keeps their funds in their bank account and then wires that money to the transaction, whether it's title or escrow. A more so of like a hedge fund or a pool of funds, those funds will get deposited into a main account, and then if it was MOR Financial in that case, we would be dispersing those funds accordingly based on a pro forma of the fund. We want to get X amount of percentage return to our investors, and we invest accordingly. But there are limitations on both sides of the fence. We choose to table fund so that we're direct to our lenders and can kind of stretch the parameters on certain deals and change with the market.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And I don't think I really realized that you guys were just basically a straight, like you said, across the table lender.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool, and that's one of the reasons that you can have some of the flexibility that you have.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's why we do first and seconds and first, seconds, and thirds. With people that we've established relationships with, we can really do a lot of things that no other people will really want to, because we can take a look at the risk in the deal from number standpoint, and then also know who we're working with. And I think with MOR Financial and what we do, if we can get to a point where we've done a deal or 2 or 3 together and we can see the process on your end, we will absolutely 100% of the time go back for you. And that's important in this business, because every once in a while you need a little break here and there. And that can be the difference between the most profitable deal of the year or, anything in between. So that's kind of what we look at. You want to know, I guess, circling back to what you would ask for from a lender is, are you a direct lender? Do you have set programs? What are your capabilities of working outside of those programs? And then what are your limitations on loan amounts? Because one way or the other, people are going to have their limitations. Most people don't do $10 or $12 million deals if they're working on single family residence in Southern California, anywhere from the beach to the Inland Empire, because it's just, what are the chances of all of those deals coming in at the same time, right?
Sure.
So you want to know everybody's limitations as well.
Well, and I think the takeaway here really is that you develop that relationship. You don't just script it out. So and going back to those scripts, the reason I think that they create those scripts is give people a little bit of a sense of confidence here. So from your perspective, are you more inclined to deal with somebody who calls you and says, "Hey, look, man, I'm just starting out. I need some help. I need some guidance. Can you take me through the process? Can you educate me a little bit, etc.?" Or are you more inclined to work with somebody who's presenting themselves more as, I've done deals before, I'm experienced, let's work together, but maybe they really aren't. So there's
I,
kind
I
of that middle ground that you have a responsibility to make sure that you're dealing with somebody who is going to go through the deal and the process and protect your asset. And just so you guys know, Corey lives in LA, so you guys might he's not going to they're not coming to take him away. I just
You can hear the sirens. I knew it was gonna.
yes.
I told you it was gonna happen. I told you it was gonna happen before we started. So sorry about
So it's all good.
that.
So
We'll get Carl to drown that sound out.
yes. So you know what I mean? Like where do you find that middle ground? Because I think a lot of people have that fear that they're going to call somebody and they're just going to get brushed off because they they don't say the right thing, or maybe they don't have enough deals under their belt.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you from firsthand experience, if knowing about somebody's experience will be easily detectable throughout the process. If somebody tells me that they are very experienced and they've done X amount of flips and they're involved in so many deals,
Hmm.
I don't even have to ask the question. I can figure it out by the time we get done with the initial underwriting of the first deal
Yeah.
because it's really, really blatant. And then at that point, to be honest with you, that's when you lose credibility. So
Yeah.
the next time that person calls me, it's going to be scrutinized more so than it would be from the other side of the fence. So I'm always from the mindset of being transparent. Now, you probably shouldn't go into a conversation saying, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm brand new. I'm just looking to get into this. I have no idea what's going on. I really want you to
Sure.
hold my hand throughout the whole process, right? But it's okay to say, hey, listen, I'm new to this. What I want you to do is help me understand what you're looking for, and I'm motivated to go find deals. But at this point, I'm working with this amount of capital. Is there a way for me to do this with you guys?
Hmm.
And that, to me, I will spend way more time with a person who's willing to open up to me on that front because we all have to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
we're okay with that. We just want to make sure we're going to spend the right amount of time with you in order to kind of explain what's going on. Because when you present yourself one way and it turns out to be the complete opposite, it's just that's when
Sure.
you turn somebody off
No,
from wanting
that's
to work
that's where
with
you break that relationship, right? That's what you make
you.
it more
Hmm.
difficult to make that connection. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's hard to retreat. It's hard to recover from that too.
yeah. Well, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves and getting some value here. I just want to remind you that if you along the way, if you have any questions or comments, anything kind of sticks out, just go ahead and either type in a question or raise your hand, and we'll get you. Obviously, we're going to do a Q&A at the end if anybody's interested, but we'll just keep kind of plugging along here.
Hmm. Hmm.
The other one challenge that I get, Corey, and I'm sure you must run into this as well, is I
Hmm.
have wholesalers and other people say, "Hey, I have this deal, I have this deal, I have this deal," and you run into you spend about 30 seconds into it, you already know it's not a deal, and then you
Right.
just kind of throw your hands up in the air and be like, "Okay, so I gotta somebody's got to teach these people
Hmm.
to help them to help me say yes." Right, because
Right.
that's in sales, and I did a webinar talking about like how everyone's a salesperson, right? Everyone is selling
Hmm.
an idea, a product or service of something, and regardless of what it is, that one of the objectives as a quote unquote salesperson or in a sales transaction, any kind of sales transaction, is helping the prospect, right, to say yes. And when you bring me a
Hmm.
deal, I'm your prospect at that point. I'm your prospective
Hmm.
buyer, I'm your prospective whatever. And so put together something, right? Put together a package in a certain way with some due diligence in there so that I know that you respect my time enough to where you spent enough time actually going through the process. It shows me that you know what you're doing. And here you go. Here's my package. Here's all
Hmm.
the due diligence. Here are the pictures. Here's a bid. Here's whatever, an estimate, whatever it is. Help me say yes. So
Hmm.
how do you relate to that at all in your
Well,
business?
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you when we are saying that everybody is a salesperson in real estate because you have something to offer. I mean, it's one of those things where we all want to be fortunate enough to be on the other side of the table where everybody is bringing us the deals to take them down, and we get to cherry pick everything that is the best of the best, right?
Right.
Um, but it takes such a long time to get there. And so you see, even I would say, as a lender, we get more deals we have to turn down than deals that we fund because
Sure.
they're unrealistic, like you said. But still, you're looking and spending your time and spending your efforts on trying to figure out how to make that work.
Hmm.
You know, wholesalers are an interesting breed. Definitely feel very strongly about that. I mean, it is a great way to get into investing in real estate and locking up properties. Unfortunately, in my experience,
Hmm.
there are fewer really good ones than the ones like you mentioned that just are misinterpreting values and whatnot.
Right.
But I don't blame them at all for that because really a wholesaler, their job is to get a property bought by an investor. So,
Sure.
I mean, they're a salesperson in their own right. So if somebody is going to overpay for a property, that's the market value for that property. Now, the person buying it is going to be burned on that.
Hmm.
And hopefully, I don't present a wholesale deal to my investors and borrowers that happens. But at the same time, I don't know necessarily if I can blame a wholesaler for that because they're in it to make a living, sell contracts, properties that they have under contracts. But from a way to sell somebody, I think being realistic, it just depends on what your goals are. Is it to make $20,000 on this wholesale deal, or is it to unload 15 properties over the next year to the same person for 5 to 7? It
Hmm.
depends on your strategy. Sell your strategy more so than anything. Um, I'm always for the longevity of situations and relationships, but on the flip side, not everybody has that luxury. So, it's kind of a fine line, and I understand both sides of the fence to it. If people come to us with unrealistic expectations, we can sniff them out relatively quickly,
Sure.
hopefully.
So,
Um,
but you appreciate somebody coming to you and saying, here's this, here's what we want to do, here's the projections, here's the comps that we found, here's the estimate on these repairs, here's the area and the plan.
mhm,
Now, it might be in their mind a good plan and a good due diligence package, so to speak, but you're still
mhm.
going to quote unquote trust but verify, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You're still going to pull your own comps. You're still going to, potentially. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys estimate repairs at all on your end, or do you have a formula, or do you just kind of trust that?
Well, naturally, just to be honest, I mean, it's after probably looking at, I would say, over 2,000 deals in the last 2 years. Naturally, I can kind of pick out a funky rehab hit because we have seen so many successful flips
Hmm.
that have been, and that's to say where you can cut corners and where you can't. I mean,
Hmm.
it's one of those things where my general rule of thumb, just to start off as a baseline, and for new investors, I would think this is a very good number to use, is about 10% of the after repair value. So if your after repair value is 350,000 and you're buying it for 220, you're probably going to want to put roughly 35 grand into it as an estimation. And then you
Sure.
go into the property and see where you may be able to save money or where you may have to spend a little bit more. Um, and so I take that as a general rule of thumb.
Hmm.
But presentation is huge. A track record is very beneficial, and we will trust but verify. You took the words right out of my mouth because if we took every word for everybody, MOR Financial would be out of business very
Yeah.
quickly.
Sure.
So it's
Well,
so we underwrite it.
now
We'll
I
take a look
feel
at our
bad.
own.
I think I've abused our relationship a little bit here because you just said a presentation is great, and when I deal with my private money investors, I put together a full on presentation. There's a
Mm-hmm,
little PowerPoint that goes along with it that explains everything, and then
mm-hmm.
with you, I'm just like, hey Corey, here's an email. Here's all the details of stuff. Like, what do you think? So now I
Well,
feel bad.
no,
It's
no,
kind
no,
of
no,
like,
because
man.
well, that was not a. I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to bring that up, though, Ivan. I appreciate
Now
that. No, I'm
we
just kidding. I'm just
I will say this, okay? Don't do that to Corey.
kidding.
Okay,
No,
I've spent
well,
lots of time developing my friendship, and I can abuse it if I
but
want to.
you can absolutely. But no, I think a presentation you can use that loosely. So from a presentation standpoint, on the initial review of a deal, really for anybody who wants to submit a deal to us, we just need the address, the purchase price, your anticipated rehab amount, and what you feel the after repair value is.
Hmm.
Especially if it's a fix and flip, obviously.
All
The
right.
reason why we want to see your after repair value is not because we're going to take your value and say, okay, this is what your loan's going to be, but I'm
Yeah.
going to go check it. So if you tell me you're an experienced flipper and you've done 10 deals, you may not be the one on the HUD of those deals, but you're a partner on the deal and you know the in and outs of all of those deals. And
Hmm.
you give me an after repair value and I go and run the numbers and my after repair value is $50,000, $70,000 lower than yours.
Right.
I know that you're not really walking the walk, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. Just present it that way on the front end. Hey, I'm not so
Well,
sure
and
what
let
I'm
me
saying.
comment on that here for a second, Corey. Not to cut you off, I'm going to put you on the kind of on the coals here because
Mm-hmm,
what about? I mean, our hard money lenders, and maybe just as a broad stroke, and maybe
mm-hmm,
you can speak to the industry, but
mm-hmm,
aren't you guys really kind of conditioned to be more conservative anyway? So if I say my after repair value is 550, wouldn't you just be like, well, we're going to be a little more conservative and put that thing at 535?
Well,
So is that really a matter of a difference in experience, or are
no,
you guys
no.
really shaving a little bit just to be conservative?
Well, we're not, and I mean, not even to, I mean, I can't really put this in a soft way. We won't shave values at all. We're
Okay,
going to take the absolute true value of the property. And from my perspective, I want that value to be as high as possible. So on
sure.
the sales side of things, I want to go to my investor and say, this property is going to go for $1 million.
Hmm.
Here is the factual evidence of why it will.
Hmm.
So from our standpoint, I have no intention at all ever to be conservative on that standpoint. But the more important factor is I want to be realistic.
Yeah,
So if you show me a property that you're anticipating an after repair value of 500,000, and I look at comparables, and there's one property out of 17 that have sold in the last 90 days that sold for 515, and the
hmm,
rest of them sold for 475 or lower.
yeah,
I'm not going to hang my hat on that one,
yeah. No,
you
that's
know.
that's
And
definitely not being conservative. That's just being
no, I
intelligent.
mean, exactly. So, from that standpoint, I don't want to be conservative. I want to find a creative way to push the loan amounts as much as possible. But I also don't want to approve a loan and fund a transaction with an after repair value that's not realistic, because ultimately that comes back to hurting the borrower.
Of course.
And if the property is sitting on the market for 30, 40, 50 days longer than the average days on market in that neighborhood or in that zip code,
Hmm.
who do you think the borrower comes back to? They're going to come back to Corey at MOR Financial and say, well, your appraiser,
Yeah.
your third party appraiser said this is going to sell for this much. Why is it not? And so
Hmm.
we're actually one of the only companies out there. We do use a third party appraisal service, and they're not hired by MOR Financial. And if there's a big discrepancy in value, we encourage our borrowers to bring in their data, their analysis that supports the number that they're looking at, and we
Hmm.
get on a conference call with the appraiser and say, hey, listen, what are we all looking at? Are we missing something on any end of the table? If we are, let's correct it and make sure that we're presenting to our investors the most accurate number. And I think that's where the conversation of conservative hard money lenders comes from, where, I'll give you 80% ARV, but I'm going to determine the ARV,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of avoid that situation as well. And, I don't
Okay,
really
because I
believe
because
in
I have, I
being
have
over
had
conservative.
experiences like that in the past, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm just kind of, we want to ferret that out of here, because there are lenders, I think, in my opinion, from
Mm-hmm.
experience that I've had, that will do that, and I know that you guys won't, because we have reviewed comps together and we have done that kind of
Right.
stuff. So let me segue a little bit into something that's a little bit different, because you
Mm-hmm.
guys will lend on not only acquisition but rehab as well. How do
Mm-hmm.
you how do you kind of structure the draw schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
coordinating with
Ooh,
contractors and that kind of thing?
that's a great question. I mean, that's a great question. And to kind of circle back to the hard money lender interview, or the questions that you ask them, this is one that you want to hit and understand 100%, because every company is different. And it's important to know, because your cash flow throughout the project is going to be significantly affected depending on how a company will handle that. The way that we work is a little bit different than most companies, where we don't hold on to your money as if it's a hostage situation or whatnot. We want you
Hmm.
to use that money, whether we fund it or you bring it in. We want that money to be used for the project. So everything with us is a percentage of completion, and that goes all the way down to the line item of the rehab bid that you give us. So if we're holding 20 or 30, let's say $30,000 for a rehab
Hmm.
that has spelled out on a general contractor bid or a very well put together borrower rehab bid, line by line item, totals up to 30,000.
Right.
We'll do an initial disbursement of 20%. So that would be $6,000 on that particular draw.
Okay.
Once the deal funds, so that a borrower can get started and doesn't necessarily have to spend money out of pocket per se to
Hmm.
get started on the project, which I don't know if anybody else does that out there, but from our standpoint, I think it's beneficial to get the project started. Um, and then everything else is a percentage of completion. So the
Okay.
goal is to be releasing out of that total 30,000, whatever percent has been completed on the property. So if we want to get an inspection done, which is a third-party inspection service, they'll go out and confirm work has been completed, and the inspection report comes back and says that it's 50% complete. We can release up to 50% of what we're holding, and there
Okay.
will be a balance of $15,000 left, right?
So you're not doing weekly draws, right? You'd be like
Right.
20% now, maybe 50% once 50% is completed, and then you hold back, like, say 20, 25% until
Mhm.
final punch list.
No, 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 no. I mean, well, we can do as many inspections as the borrower would like. There
Mm-hmm.
are costs for inspections, and us, it's nominal. I mean, it's about $150,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, actually one of the lowest in the industry as well from a cost standpoint. So we can do as many inspections as needed. They can be weekly, it can be bi-weekly, um, but we, I want to keep that cost down as much as possible. So a good, I guess, a draw schedule from the borrower is probably a good way to kind of plan around that. And general contractors, subcontractors, that whole industry, including any other industry in the world, gets paid for services rendered, right?
Right.
So the old the backlash that we always get, and I think every lender will get it as well, is, well, I need to pay my guys, they got to work this week. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
not very true because most people get paid for the work that they've done. I know my paycheck happens that way, and just about everybody else's too. I think the flippers out there would agree. You're not going to get the $50,000 profit before you flip the property.
Right.
So, so we do that, and we try to be as quick as possible within 48 to 72 hours of the request. We can get the third-party inspection service out there to the property, get the report back, and either get a wire or a check drafted up within that. I say 72 hours, but typically it's a 48-hour turnaround.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense to me. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody else. And anybody that wants to work with more or any kind of hard money lender out there, make sure that you understand how that process works. If there is a specific
And
process, or if they're flexible to whatever you feel comfortable with.
yeah, and let me jump in there real quick. 'Cause let's just
Hmm.
take a look at the raw numbers, right? So the way that we would do it is it's a percentage of completion. So if you're 20% done with the property, we can release $6,000. If you're
Hmm.
50% done with the property, and anything in between, we can release $15,000. Some companies, and in your interview process, you want to ask these questions. They require you to be done with a complete phase of a
Hmm.
property. So let's say you can't get any draws until you're 40% complete with the property. So 40% is, it's like whatever 40% is on 30,000. I think it's 12 grand, 12.5, right?
Hmm.
Um, so you're going to have to float that money into the deal until you come to a percentage completion that the lender recognizes. That's money that you can't put into another deal. So pay attention to your cash flow, right? If they're
Mm.
holding on to your money a little bit longer than they should, or whatever their structure is that they believe in, make sure you work that into your numbers because you don't want to become late on loan payments or not be able to exercise another deal that comes across your desk. You want to
Sure.
have that money available for that deal. That's important.
Well, and here's just a quick follow-up question to that then. Do you guys have a kind of a cost analyzer, deal analyzer, kind of spreadsheet of some kind to help people analyze it if they don't have that themselves?
Oh, you want the secret formula that we keep in house? It's like right next. It's in the vault right next to the Coca-Cola ingredients. Is that right? Um,
Well, I'm
you
just
know,
saying because I have one that I can make available to people, but I don't know if there's something that you guys just use to say here's what the
well,
costs are going to be for this period of time.
Well, this kind of goes back to the point where I'd rather have people call me.
Okay.
We do have an analyzer. We keep it in house primarily because I want to make sure that I'm looking at the numbers the right way and everything of that sort. It's a very basic spreadsheet. If I take a PDF snapshot of what those numbers are, people can reverse engineer them pretty easily.
Oh, sure.
So it's not any secret. It's a very basic analyzer. Probably it's very similar. It's nothing different than what I'm sure you're looking at. However, when we're going through a deal, we calculate all expenses into the deal. So if you wanted to go, whether it's a first position loan only, a first and a second, or 100% financing type of deal, we can always go through the entire expenses that are involved in that particular transaction, do the calculation of net return on investment, cash on cash return on investments, and everything of that sort, and talk about it at that front. We typically don't make it available to the public. I mean, it's only an Excel spreadsheet though. That's why it's nothing
Yeah.
trade secret at all.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, come on, man. No need to make a big deal out of it or anything.
No, that's all right. I mean, I would love to go through it. I'd like to go through it with
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
otherwise, nobody's going to call. And AJ and Sean, they're going to say, why,
Yeah.
the
Right.
podcast was great, but nobody's calling you.
Well, I have kind of a question that maybe basic to some out there, but so maybe don't spend too much time on here. I know we're pushing an hour already,
Mm-hmm.
but can you explain just the difference between the lien positions? What the lien
Yeah.
positions mean, what you're gonna what obviously more requires, and if we're using a gap funder and a private
Mm-hmm.
money lender, kind of the relationship between those, so that people really understand what they're for.
Okay. Uh, I guess the basic way to kind of answer that is A lien position is a position of priority of security of an investment is the way I kind of like to word it. So if you're in first position, you're in front of the line. Should an
Mm-hmm.
investor, a lender of ours, take a first position against or recording a trustee, a first position trustee against a property, and something wrong were to happen throughout the process, and let's say we would have to foreclose on it, out of the whole process that takes way too much time in California. When the property sells at an auction or whatever it may be, the first position is going to have the priority to recuperate all of their investment,
Mm-hmm.
their legal fees, the interest and default interest that's accrued, and everything of that sort. Now, if there's money left over after that, then, which in some cases there is not, then the second position lender is next in line.
Sure.
So as you can kind of see, and you can work your way down to second, and third is even more of a riskier position. Work yourself down the line where second position can be and hypothetically will be wiped out completely in some cases if things were to go bad. Now, with us and MOR Financial, we've done over 450 transactions in the last 3.5 years doing private money, and we've only foreclosed on one particular borrower, and that was a non-cooperative type of borrower. We don't really like to do that, and we're not in the business to do that. So we want to work out solutions in the worst times, you know.
Right.
So that's the differences in positions. Now, go ahead.
Well, but that's one of the when you're talking safety instruments with your investors, even if you're using a hard money lender and you have a quote unquote gap funder, which is nothing more than a private money investor. That's something that they need to understand. Like, look, this is the one of the security instruments that I'm giving you is a lien position against equitable real estate, so that in case anything happens, and I've even told my investors, you want me to not perform. It's actually in your best interest for me to not perform. Obviously, if they have the time to do the flip, and which if they did, they wouldn't be giving me the money in the first place. But in reality, if I defaulted and they foreclosed, now they can finish the deal on their own and take all the money.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, it is so much more complex than just that. I mean, we were literally talking about that today in our office because we just always kind of, yeah, I mean, if you ever come over to the MOR Financial office, I know you've been there. We just really try to have pretty much a think tank every day to create, just to get the juices flowing, right? Get creativity going. But it's just so much more than that. I mean, people are under the impression that when you foreclose, you just immediately own the property. Well, no, there's a huge and a huge process that goes into that, and then it goes to a sale. And then, if everything works out, then you have the property, So if it were that easy, then a lot more people would do it that way. But again, I don't think that's the mindset behind successful lenders, because if I'm not in the business to create a rental portfolio. Right?
Sure.
And ultimately, some lenders are out there to do that, and they have no problem filing annuities and foreclosing.
Yeah.
I call them loan-to-own companies. But we don't do that. We want to see borrowers successful, so we can.
Well, that really sounds more like a scam to me. You know what I mean?
Well,
and I guess
loan down.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be surprised at how many people do that. But I mean, there are reasons behind that, and if you take the emotion out of it, and you take all of the headaches out of foreclosing and the people that are negatively affected about that, from an investment side of things, from the lender and the hedge fund that probably works on that, they get a killer return on their investment. So that's why, as a borrower, you have to know who you're working with. Who has your best interest, outside of you. So,
and then of course, either the person who brings the most money to the transaction is going to get that first lien position, or any hard money lender, right? Even if you bring the junior share of the money to the deal, you're still going to require that first lien regardless, right?
Well, meaning MOR Financial.
Yeah, or MOR Financial, or a hard money lender. I mean, if they're funding 50,000 and I got 100,000 into it, well, if I'm using you, I almost have to put you in first lien, don't I?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a tough question to answer, because I mean, it doesn't matter about the dollar amount. It's more so about the preference and the priority of the lender. So you get into some situations where you mentioned the term gap funder, right? Let's say we're buying a property that's $150,000. And you want to build a second unit on the back of the lot, or whatever it may be, and we do a loan at 120, and then you come in with the rehab and construction cost of 225, to make 2 or 3 units on a property. The acquisition lender, in this case, would most likely be the first position lender, and then the construction cost of rehab would be brought in by a gap funder, and they
Mm-hmm.
would they would be in their best interest to record a second position. Not all the
Right.
time do they do that, which as a borrower, if you offer that up to your lenders, no matter what, you'll have a very good relationship with your lenders no matter
Sure.
what as well. Um, so it doesn't matter about the dollar amount. It matters about maybe the policy or however the lender can get on board. And everything is negotiable, so it just really depends on who you're working with at that point. So I'm
Hmm.
not, sorry to say there's not really a clear cut answer on that one.
Okay. Well, and
Yeah.
I like that answer because that even shows more of how you're flexible and creative. Because a lot of hard
Mm-hmm.
money lenders will not do that. They demand
Mm-hmm.
it, and there is no flexibility, and there is no. But that's probably just because of the way you have yourself structured. So
Well,
it's another thing that's good to know.
in more financial, we typically don't do standalone seconds because we service all of our loans in house. So that gives us a little bit of a leg up to be able to understand the transaction from origination until the time that it pays off
Hmm.
and kind of take a little bit of the risk out. Not much, but it mitigates the risk a little bit when you're talking about working with second position lenders. So if we write a first, then we have opportunities to write seconds on deals as well. Typically, we don't write standalone seconds, and we are always welcome to writing a first and having a second come behind us from another investor or
Sure.
another company, the network that you're working with. But the standalone second thing is kind of a little bit of a risky proposition because we don't want any of our lenders in the worst case
Yeah.
to be wiped out. That would be bad.
Okay. Now,
Mm-hmm.
talking about closing the deal, what can
Mm-hmm.
somebody expect when the property sells and everybody gets paid? It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much the same as any other deal, right?
It's a tradition, and most of the time is more of a conventional real estate transaction because you have a conventional buyer coming in on a flip property to move into owner occupant or retail buy.
Mm-hmm.
So just the process that happens is somebody gets their offer accepted by you. Escrow is opened. Escrow will then order a payoff demand from MOR Financial and MOR Servicing. We will provide a payoff demand valid through however many days that the escrow dictates to us that they feel the deal will close by. And then once the loan documents are signed by the buyer, funds are dispersed through escrow, the reconveyance is completed by our lender to release all liens that we have held against the property, and a new deed of trust and uh, loan is recorded against the property for the buyer, and everybody is clear to
And
go at that
everybody
point. So
everybody gets paid.
everybody gets paid. Hopefully, that's the best. Hopefully, the numbers work out.
Now, kind of one of the last points I want to ask you about is what about the people out there who want to build a portfolio? They want to be more cash flow investors than fix and flip
Mm-hmm.
guys. Do you guys
Mm-hmm.
have or are you creating some kind of longer term loans to help people do a kind of a fix and hold and then maybe refinance later
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even refinance into something longer term? And is that
Right.
something that you guys are working with?
We do, some of our investors and some of the borrowers that we work with have already established those rental portfolios, and everybody knows. I guess maybe not everybody. That's kind of an overstatement, but a lot of people know and are familiar with conventional lending, maxing you out as a person or an entity at about 10 loans.
10,
I
yeah.
I would be surprised to see many people who have 10 loans, but at the same time, that's the number that is mentioned out there.
Yeah.
So, once you get past that particular loan amount, you'd have to probably go private or do a wrap loan of some sort, all-inclusive umbrella or whatnot. But
Sure.
we do offer 3 to 5 year loan terms in the right cases. Now, nobody can really look at anybody right now in a serious way, shape, or form and tell us where the market's going to be in 3 to 5 years. So
Hmm.
there's more of an intrinsic risk there from a lender's perspective. So how do you offset risk? Typically by lower LTVs, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in a 50 to 60% LTV range, you typically can get a 3 to 5 year term, 65% to 70%. You probably at a 2 to 3 year term, maybe 3 years, at 70% and whatnot. But so we do offer interest only loans for those longer term,
Hmm.
medium term type of situations. Um, we do in fact have a rehab or refinance type of product. So if we did a loan at 65% ARV, then once the project is completed and there's a renter in place, now that 65% ARV in fact turns into that 65% as is value. And so
Okay.
by the time we want to refinance, the property is being rented, let's say for 2 or 3 months. We can see the rent rolls, the lease agreements, the final inspection shows that it's completed and had been improved. and you go from there. So we do have that option, and it's offered to relatively experienced investors or people who can cash flow on the property more so than
Okay.
anything else. And 3 to 5
So
years.
you're looking to work with people like you said that have already a somewhat established rental portfolio.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, obviously, we prefer working with the most experienced people. That's just nature of the beast. But if you're buying your first property, my first question would be, how come you're not going conventional, right? With the rates the way they are at this point. So if you're
Sure.
buying your first property, let's get across that question. If it's a credit issue,
Well,
if
let's
it's
be
an
let's be
income issue,
realistic here, Corey. There's
Mhm.
probably 75, 80, 85% of people out there who do not qualify for conventional financing
Mhm.
right now.
Very true, and that's where we come in. So that's not necessarily an issue with us, but that's the first question that comes up. Now the next thing would be, how is this property going to cash flow? And general rule of thumb with our investors is we want the rents to be about 125% of the mortgage payment, whatever that mortgage payment would be.
Okay.
So if we can kind of work in that space, and then you have capital to bring into the deal too, which unfortunately, it depends. If you're barely getting into the real estate game and you don't have 30, 35, 40% to put down on a property,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to do a higher leverage creative option on a longer term loan. Now, we could always try to get between 70 and 80% LTV on the purchase. Well, my first question to that would be, is it going to cash flow? Second question is, what's the plan after a year? Because the higher the leverage, typically the shorter the term. Are
Sure.
you going to refi after a year, or are you going to pay us off or sell the property, or what's going to happen on that
Yeah.
front?
What's the strategy?
Yeah. So even
Okay.
once you peel back the first layer of the onion, there's plenty more afterwards to figure out, right?
Well, that's awesome, Corey. Man, I just want to say I really appreciate you coming on with me tonight and adding the value to people. Hopefully, they got to know you better, know more about more financial, know more about lending
Mhm.
in general, so that they can get their deals funded. Is there anything that you would like to say before we open it up for some potential Q&A?
Other than the fact that just go after what you're passionate about, and I would say focus more so than anything for people. What I've noticed with especially people getting into the industry is find something to specialize in and go work that angle for a significant amount of time. We as investors typically get I forget who mentioned this. Maybe it was Christina Scarrett from the FIBI groups, but we have the shiny toy syndrome, right? So
Yeah.
we're thinking about doing fixing and flipping, and then we see a friend who's got 20 rental properties. We're going, well, maybe I should do that, or I have a buddy who's developing. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
So find a strategy, stick to the strategy, wear it out, and then once you have mastered to a certain extent that particular strategy, then start branching off into other opportunities and building your portfolio that way, and you'll see a lot of long-term success doing that.
I couldn't agree more, and that's something that serial entrepreneurs struggle with. I think sometimes, even not just the newbies, but sometimes,
Oh,
one of the things that Grant Cardone says, who I like to listen to and read some of his books, he always
mhm,
says, "Say yes to every opportunity until you absolutely have to say no." And so
mhm,
there's kind of a dichotomy there because I found myself saying yes to too many things and then realizing, oh, man, I got to scale back. Like what's going on here? I got look at all these things I got on my plate, and it was exciting. It's this and that. Is okay. In order for me to be really effective, I have to get back to focus. I have to decide what is it
mhm,
that I want to do. Maybe go have a word vomit and figure out, well, maybe what I'm doing right now isn't necessarily what I really want to do, but I've gone this far in order to be able to realize that. And you do have to
right.
spend some time and have some moments with yourself to have the clarity and realize where you want to go. Start writing it down.
Mhm,
Write down your goals, and as you progress and as you learn new things, your goals might change and you might change strategy. And it's been said that most entrepreneurs reinvent themselves or change their quote unquote strategy or career at least 5 times in their life.
oh yeah.
So,
I would
you know,
say any
yeah,
professional
yeah.
does that for
So,
sure.
so if that's you, don't feel bad because, or maybe it was 5 to 10 times. I think that's more accurate. But anyway, guys,
Well,
any questions, any comments? I can either unmute your mic if you have something, you can ask it live. If you don't have that capability, you can just punch it into the question bar, and then I will go ahead and repeat it in the best way possible. And if not, we're gonna start wrapping this thing up. Let me see. I do have a comment here. Thank you, Ivan and Corey. It was a great webinar. Thank you.
awesome. Well,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much,
Thank you.
Michael.
And I guess to piggyback off of what you were saying, write a business plan. That's one of the obvious things. Write a business plan, maybe 5 years or 6 years or whatever it may be, and project
Hmm.
out how you're going to get to that level and really make it detailed. Everybody has grandiose goals.
Yeah.
Break them down into smaller goals and really achievable goals on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What do you have to do today to get to where you have to be in a
Yeah.
month, to get to where you want to be in a year, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and we're huge on that. And if anybody that's been following us for a while knows that, I want to share with you some of our links, and I'll come back to some other questions if there are any. And if you want to voice a question, just raise your hand. I'll unmute you. But you can go to our website at c2crea.com. You can check out all our resources, all our podcasts, our radio show, all of our webinars. This particular webinar will be on there as well. If you want to share the podcast and the video with any of your friends down the road, if you feel it's going to be valuable. YouTube.com/Ivan Oberon is where I do other recordings. Facebook.com/Ivan Oberon. If we are not friends on Facebook yet, go on Facebook, add me as a friend. Be happy to
It's not
connect with you.
possible.
Right? Yeah, I'm working on it, but hey, I haven't reached my 5,000 closest friends yet, so it's got to be possible. And email me if you have any questions, Ivan at c2crea.com. If you want a faster response, usually a PM on Facebook helps because I get that message. And of course, if you have any questions, if you want a deal review, if you need anything from Corey, you can reach him at Corey@morefinancial.com. And this is more for the folks listening to the podcast, because I know you've been staring at that this whole, for over an hour already. But anything else? As far as the goals thing go, it's one of the reasons that we have the 21-day challenge, which you can check out at our website as well. And it's about writing down your goals, just starting the habit of writing down your goals. And when you want to take it to the next level, we also have the Thinking to Succeed project, which we really dive into what Corey was talking about. How do you take your big goals, right? Because you have to have the big vision goals. I want to make $1 million a year. You have to have those big vision goals, but then you have to start kind of breaking them down. And what's it going to take? Who are the people that I'm going to need in order to accomplish these things? What are my priority items? What am I going to do first? How does my life going to look like? Start envisioning yourself and creating these mind maps and these pictures. So we go through all that kind of stuff in the Thinking to Succeed project as well. And I encourage you guys to at least start with a 21-day challenge. I guarantee you, if you're not writing down your goals on a daily basis right now, that will begin to change your life in the way that you think, and the way you feel, the way the confidence that you have, and it'll help you on your journey to peak performance and finding clarity in what you want to do in your life. And with that, I don't think we have any other questions. So thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll get this recording done and over to you, and maybe we'll get it over to Caro. And he
can get some of the background noise down. Yeah, sorry about that.
either that, or we'll have him add something like you getting hauled away, to jail or something like that at the end.
Or maybe we put some like techno music in the background and make it a song and dance on it. I don't know. So.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great weekend. And Corey, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.